Versace and Dior, Linda reigned as the uncrowned queen. She was the woman who once made the industry tremble with her legendary declaration, "We don't wake up for less than $10,000 a day." A line that seemed arrogant, yet perfectly defined the power of the first generation of supermodels, the ones who transformed modeling from a silent backstage job into the pinnacle of cultural influence. And yet, the spotlight tells only half the story. The other half is shadow. Linda disappeared from the runway for nearly a decade, living in silence, avoiding cameras, as though the world had forgotten the very legend it once worshipped. So what turned a million-dollar supermodel into a woman hiding in pain? And more importantly, what brought her back, not as the symbol of flawless beauty, but as a warrior, unafraid to live her truth? Linda Evangelista was born in 1965 in Ontario, Canada, into a working-class Italian immigrant family. Far from the glittering lights of the runway, her childhood was defined by a modest life in a small community, where immigrants had to work twice as hard to prove themselves. Yet it was there that her love for beauty first began to bloom. Linda was captivated by fashion magazines and would often experiment with hairstyles and outfits in front of the mirror. The turning point came in 1978 when, at just 12 years old, Linda entered a local beauty pageant. She didn't win the crown, but she did catch the eye of modeling scouts. A few years later, after signing with Elite Model Management, the same agency that launched many of the world's biggest names, Linda began her serious journey into modeling. At the time, the standards of beauty and fashion were narrow: long hair, delicate features, and a soft, feminine demeanor. Linda chose a different path. In 1988, she cut off her long locks and debuted a bold, short pixie cut. Overnight, that haircut transformed her into fashion's ultimate chameleon. Karl Lagerfeld called her the woman who can be anything. Vogue declared, "Every time Linda changes, the entire industry has to change with her." That fearless reinvention propelled Linda into the legendary ranks of the Big Five, alongside Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, and Claudia Schiffer. They weren't just models, they were cultural phenomena, women whose magnetism rivaled that of Hollywood's stars. From a Canadian girl with humble beginnings, Linda rose to embody adaptability itself, the power to redefine beauty every time she appeared. And it was this very quality that made her an irreplaceable figure in the golden age of the supermodel. The 1990s were the golden age of the supermodel, and Linda Evangelista stood at the very center of that storm. Alongside Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, and Claudia Schiffer, Linda became one of the legendary Big Five, a group of women who not only transformed fashion, but redefined what global fame meant. If Naomi was the embodiment of power, Cindy carried American allure, Christy radiated elegance, and Claudia represented classic Barbie beauty, then Linda was something entirely different, the queen of transformation. A short haircut, a new hair color, or even just the flicker of her gaze was enough to spark global trends. She was dubbed fashion's ultimate chameleon, the model who never stopped reinventing herself. Throughout that decade, Linda appeared on more than 700 magazine covers, from Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, and Cosmopolitan, to countless experimental and independent titles. She fronted multi-million-dollar campaigns for Chanel, Dior, Dolce & Gabbana, Versace, Valentino, and L'Oreal, while becoming the undisputed muse of Karl Lagerfeld and Gianni Versace, two legends who trusted her ability to transform like no other. A defining moment came in 1989 with Peter Lindbergh's iconic black and white photographs. In them, Linda stood alongside Naomi, Christy, Cindy, and Tatiana Petitz, stripped of excess glamour, radiating raw beauty. That image didn't just capture an era, it gave birth to the very concept of the supermodel in popular culture, forever cementing Linda's place in history. On the runway, Linda dazzled with a presence so powerful it earned its own name, the Linda. Her walk was more than movement. It was charisma, decisiveness, and pride wrapped into every step, captivating audiences instantly. Fashion houses trusted her to open or close shows because they knew when Linda walked, the entire show ascended to another level. What made Linda the uncrowned queen was her unique ability to merge art with commerce. She could front a luxury haute couture campaign for Chanel one moment and then represent L'Oreal beauty products the next, bridging the gap between exclusivity and accessibility. Linda didn't just sell fashion, she sold dreams. That is why her influence stretched far beyond the runway. But Linda was more than a model. She was a cultural icon. Her daring pixie cut in 1988 shattered conventional ideas of femininity, proving that women didn't need long hair to be alluring. Her boldness, her ability to transform, and her commanding presence became a template for a generation of women seeking liberation from tradition. To the public, Linda was both glamorous and relatable. She could be seen at glittering parties alongside the elite, but also laughing loudly backstage or playfully joking with colleagues. This duality made her feel real, a woman who was both extraordinary and deeply human. And then came her legendary statement, "We don't wake up for less than $10,000 a day." To some, it sounded arrogant. To the world, it was a declaration, a bold reminder that supermodels were no longer walking hangers, but stars with power and value equal to Hollywood actors and global musicians. At her peak, Linda Evangelista was the very definition of an uncrowned queen. She needed no crown, because every step, every glance, was proof of her reign over fashion. If the 1990s were the golden era of Linda Evangelista, then the 2010s marked one of the most devastating downfalls in fashion history. In 2015, Linda underwent a cosmetic procedure called cool sculpting, a fat-freezing technology promoted as safe and non-invasive. But instead of delivering the slim silhouette she had hoped for, Linda suffered a rare complication known as PAH, paradoxical adipose hyperplasia. Rather than disappearing, the treated fat cells expanded, hardened, and left her body visibly disfigured. For a woman once hailed as the face of an era, the shock went far beyond the physical. Linda admitted she could no longer look in the mirror, no longer step into public view. Once a supermodel who could shake the entire industry with just a new haircut, she became a woman who hid from cameras, living in isolation for nearly 6 years. During that time, the world nearly forgot her name. Runways stopped mentioning her. The media, which once showered her with praise, fell silent. But the deepest pain came from within. Linda felt stripped of her very identity, the identity she had built through decades of work, sacrifice, and glory. In her rare interviews, Linda confessed she sank into severe depression. There were days she wouldn't leave the house, refused to see anyone, and even questioned whether she had any reason to go on. To many, it was just a medical complication. To Linda, it was a complete collapse, the fall of a legend once considered flawless. Her story also exposed a brutal truth. In an industry that worships beauty, even the smallest crack can mean replacement. Fashion can crown you today and just as easily abandon you tomorrow. And that became the darkest shadow in Linda Evangelista's journey, a darkness that seemed as if it might consume her forever. For nearly 6 years, Linda Evangelista lived in silence. But in 2021, the world once again heard her voice. On her social media, Linda posted a heartfelt letter admitting that she had been permanently disfigured after the cool sculpting procedure and that she had lived in shame and isolation ever since. What shocked the world was not just the confession, but the courage. A supermodel once worshipped as the epitome of beauty was now openly speaking about failure, pain, and mental scars. Instead of hiding, Linda chose to confront, and that moment became one of the most human and powerful events in fashion history. Millions expressed their empathy. Colleagues, from Naomi Campbell to Cindy Crawford, sent love and support. Even Gen Z audiences, who hadn't grown up with Linda, felt a deep connection with her. They saw in Linda something familiar: the pain of living under society's unrealistic standards and expectations. In 2022, Linda officially returned to the spotlight in a major Fendi campaign celebrating the 25th anniversary of the baguette bag. When she stepped out in a majestic gown, her proud gaze unshaken, the fashion world erupted. It was not just the return of a supermodel, it was the return of a warrior declaring, "I am still here." That same year, Linda appeared on the cover of British Vogue. The striking black and white photos did not attempt to hide the signs of her disfigurement. Instead, they celebrated them as part of her legacy. Linda said, "I am not the same person I once was, but I have learned to love this version of myself." This marked a new chapter for Linda Evangelista, no longer the flawless icon of the 1990s, but a symbol of authenticity. What makes her comeback remarkable is that it was built not on glamour, but on vulnerability. Linda no longer needed to prove she was the most beautiful or the most powerful supermodel. She only needed to prove one thing: even when the face is no longer perfect, a person's worth does not disappear. For Gen Z, a generation exhausted by photoshopped images and artificial ideals, Linda Evangelista became living proof that authenticity is the new beauty. From someone once forgotten by fashion, Linda returned not to revive nostalgia, but to deliver a new message. True beauty is not the absence of cracks, but the courage to walk proudly with them. The runway lights may fade. The glamorous collections will eventually pass. But there are those whose impact transcends time. Linda Evangelista is one of them. From a $1 million supermodel of the 1990s to a woman who once disappeared into darkness and then returned as a warrior, Linda's journey is not just a story of fashion. It is a story of courage in facing pain, of turning wounds into strength. And perhaps Linda's greatest legacy is not the 700 magazine covers, but the lesson. True beauty is not found in perfection, but in authenticity.